Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another Top Cut breakdown. I know it's the middle of the week. I didn't really want to do this way, but if you guys watched my video yesterday, I talked to you guys a little bit about how I was on vacation over the weekend, so I didn't get to do this video on Sunday night. And then actually yesterday I had some pretty big computer issues, so I had to deal with that. I actually recorded yesterday's video on my phone, but today I'm able to do this for you guys. I hope you guys are still interested in seeing the Top Cut breakdown for the Carta Magica event. It's pretty cool to look at. I mean, there's actually a lot of diversity in this format and a lot of strategies I don't think we thought we would have seen. But the reason I'm able to, get through these computer issues and continue making content is because of you guys, the supporters. So guys, definitely do subscribe and make sure to go down to the description, check out all the different ways you can support the channel, because you guys honestly keep it running, and I'm so grateful, because honestly, legitimately, without you guys, I wouldn't have been able to get through these computer issues and fix what I had to fix. So I really do appreciate you guys in that regard. That being said, let's get started. So this was an online webcam tournament, best of one format. A lot of players, most of the players in the room playing green Gotenks. 30 of the players were on green Gotenks. Gotenks was the most represented deck by a very large margin in the entire tournament. But regardless, the top 16 was as follows. We had 3 Vegex, 2 Bulma, 2 Soul Striker Reborn, 2 green Gotenks, 2 Invoker, 1 Dark Broly, 1 Reboot Gohan, 1 Red Gogeta, the Prophet of Demise, 1 Red Gogeta Fusion Perfected, and 1 Majin Vegeta Aggro. So very diverse there. We're looking at 10 different leaders in this Top Cut, and it's pretty cool to talk about, although actually one of the strategies is played by 3 different leaders, which we will get into that. But anyways, guys, let's start by talking about Vegex, which had the most representation in the top 16. And actually, this is kind of cool to talk about, firstly because obviously we have the Bibbidi errata to discuss here, but also I played Vegex over the weekend, not in this tournament by any means. I played it at a few locals this weekend, but I had a lot of experience with the deck in set 11 format, just testing it and playing it this weekend. So it's kind of cool to talk about here. I mean, this deck, for all the nerfs it received, firstly we had the Turles ban, then we had the Universe 3 ban, then we had the Bibbidi errata, just to name some of the different ways that Bandai had to deal with this deck because it was way too powerful. I think this deck is much more fair now. I mean, we didn't really see it do anything week 1 of set 11 format, and I think this is probably going to be an outlier of a tournament. I mean, week 1 we saw Gotenks just absolutely destroy, decimate, wreck everything in set 11, and it looks like Vegex has a lot of representation here in this Top Cut. I don't think that's going to persist necessarily, just like Gotenks kind of fell out of that dominant position, but regardless, Vegex is just still such a powerful deck that it's going to do really well in the hands of a seasoned player that knows what they're doing with it. I mean, you don't have Bibbidi anymore to kind of just mindlessly attack with everything on your board. Like with Bibbidi, for instance, you could attack with your 1-drop Supreme Kais, make those 30k beat sticks just by 1 combo, and that was one of the ways you were able to apply pressure. Just having played Vegex over the weekend, it's not quite that aggressive anymore. I mean, to be honest, I actually didn't end most games before turn 4, so I do think the deck sees a lot of a loss in terms of aggro potential, but it just still does so many powerful things. What are those powerful things? Well, when you burst 5 and put cards into play for free, even though you don't have Bibbidi anymore at full power, it's still a very strong thing to be doing in a format like this. Just putting on that free board presence is really strong. I tried to touch on it a little bit yesterday. I don't really know where I would place Vegex in terms of like an aggro or a mid-range deck. Obviously there's no way it's a control deck, it just isn't that. But is it still an aggro deck? I feel like it pivots more between aggro and mid-range, and one of the problems with Vegex mid-range back when we first saw the Universe 3 nerfs, people didn't really think that Vegex would be able to be as aggressive as it was. A lot of people were looking at it as more of a mid-range strategy, and it was tough to play Vegex as a mid-range strategy because black doesn't have a free instant counterplay, doesn't really have any great counterplays, to be honest. I mean, Rebellion Hammer is a pretty cool card to mess with coming out of set 11, so I think that's one thing to look at there. But besides that, black didn't really have too many great counter attack options. But it's actually a little bit different now because Protector of the People and Max Power Kamehameha are just such strong utility counterattacks that black have at their disposal that it kind of does allow Vegex to play a mid-range game, and I actually noticed that myself over the weekend. Playing against Gotenks, playing against Red Gogeta, playing against Red Broly, you have Max Power Kamehameha to basically help you deal with all those tall threats, and then you're playing against something wide, you're playing against AOD, or maybe some sort of swap variant like a yellow swap, or anything that just goes wide and low to the ground. You have Protector of the People, so you do have coverage in those spots. You don't necessarily have counterplays from the bigger boss monsters, but you do have free blockers that come into play. You do have a lot of combo power with a 1-drop Supreme Kais, so I do think Vegex is still a very good deck. I don't expect it to be dominant in any real sense of the word, but it is cool to see that it's still kicking and still competitively viable, because one thing people don't want to see is like such a level of power creep that they can't play a deck that they enjoyed from a previous set. So it is cool that Vegex can see play. You only need like maybe the new Vegeta super combos, although I actually think Bibity is still very playable, and you need Goku Man on a mission, but besides that you don't really need much else from set 11. So it's very cool to see that an older deck is still playable. Next up, we're talking about two Bulma, two different variations here actually. One was a Spike Bandages build that basically just wanted to, you know, spam Earthlings and get a bunch of blockers and basically never take damage. I mean, it's just a super turtle build. And then we saw one Red Gogeta build like we saw last week. I do have a deck profile for that on the channel from last week if you want to see what a topping list looks like. But realistically, it looks a lot like most of the Red Gogeta builds that you'll see, but it does have the flexibility of turning more cards into blockers, and that draw power on the backside is really insane. Now, the thing with Bulma is like, yeah, you get that insane draw power, but because your leader is so much smaller than other leaders, 5k on the unawakened side, 10k on the awakened side, you have to usually spend more cards to defend than most of the leaders. But when you are able to span the board so well and play cards like Topo and have strong negates like Red has, you generally don't have to worry about having to combo so many cards. You generally don't let many attacks even go to combos. So as long as you're able to do that in Bulma, you're going to see some amount of success. And then playing the Spike Bandages combo, that pretty much does that, you know, to the next level, right? You're basically never letting an attack go through your leader, and you're basically just going to win out by that, you know, war of attrition, get to some game-ending boss monster and win the game that way. So Bulma seems like it's here to stay in the format, which is actually kind of cool. Soul Striker Reborn, 2 of that in the top cut. This is the only blue deck we're seeing in this top 16, and I kind of like this. I kind of saw this because, you know, in my pre-set 11 testing, Soul Striker just seemed to be the best blue deck, at least for me. And I shouldn't really say it's the best blue deck, because I'm actually a firm believer that right now, if you want to play mono blue, you have many options. Soul Striker Reborn, Zamasu, Vegito, SS3 Reboot, and SS4 Vegeta. Baby's kind of like in its own category. But yeah, I believe if you want to play mono blue, I think you have a ton of different leaders at your disposal, and each leader you know, gives advantages to certain play styles. Want to play Hyper Control? Play SS3 Reboot. Want to play more of a mid-range game? Play Soul Striker Reborn. Want to play something a little bit more aggressive? Maybe go with Zamasu from set 10. So I really do think Mono Blue is in that type of spot right now. I think it's really hard to say what the best Mono Blue leader is. I think it really is just up to your play style. Last weekend, we didn't really see much blue at all in the meta, and if we continue to see maybe like Zamasu in and out here and there, Vegito in and out here and there, I think my theory will kind of be shown to be correct a little bit. But who knows, maybe Soul Striker will just dominate. I know Marcus has been really playing the heck out of that deck on his streams, and he's been liking it a lot, so maybe it gained some popularity from that. I did actually see one of his tech cards in one of the side decks, Maturium the Brave Bruiser. It's actually a pretty good side deck against green because it's a barrier card, comes into play, gains dual attack and plus 5k if you look at the top card of your opponent's deck, and it's a battle card. It's kind of like in the same archetype as Obuni. So basically just those kind of innovative things are what's going to allow Mono Blue to get into the meta scene here, because we're seeing so many popular and successful strategies rely on certain chains. Like we're seeing Bulma with Red Gogeta, we're seeing the Vegex stuff, we're seeing Green Gotenks, which is the next deck that we're talking about. Green Gotenks coming off a week of absolute dominance like I mentioned before, and here it's a lot more tame. I mean, the strategy is still very good. Grim Reaper is an absolutely absurd card. Like playing that, you know, once on turn 2, multiple times throughout the later courses of the game, it just becomes a lot of pressure for your opponent to overcome. Couple that in with the little bit of hand control the deck's able to produce. It's not quite as hand control-y as previous green decks from like last set, but just the pressure it's able to apply, plus playing Rebrian, plus possibly playing the Android 18 super combo, it's really nuts. Next up, we had 2 Invoker. Not surprised to see it, really. I think Invoker is going to be one of those decks that kind of consistently tops here and there. Again, it has really strong win conditions that are hard to interact with. When you have like your burn combo, when you have your victory strike, a lot of decks just can't deal with it. Guys, you may really want to consider siding and or main decking your drop area negate for your appropriate color leader, because it seems like Invoker is here to stay, and you want to have that, you know, flexibility in answers for when they look at your hand, try and rip out your answer cards. You want to have that drop area negate for the victory strike. If you're playing a hyper aggressive strategy, you should do pretty well against Invoker, but anything control mid-range, you want to have those drop area negates, in my opinion. Next up, Dark Broly at 1 spot. I think it's actually a really slept on deck. I think Dark Broly is actually really strong, and from my experience and from hearing a lot of players talk about it, it is one of the harder decks to play in this format. It requires a lot of decision making. So if you are looking for a deck that actually rewards you for making the right decisions but punishes you kind of hard for making the wrong decisions, if you feel like you want to play this game and you want to, you know, live on the merits of your decisions, play Dark Broly. It actually is very, very good if you decide to put the time into it and dedicate it. You can play it a little bit more mid-rangey, go for like a later game, but it is actually a very, very strong black aggro deck. Might be the new black aggro deck since Vegex is a little bit slower now with the Bibbidi changes. Anyways, next up, Reboot Gohan, one of our other hyper-aggressive strategies. Interestingly enough, this is a best-of-1 tournament. There's only one Gohan in the top 16. That's a little bit weird there because usually in these best-of-1 tournaments, we see it actually do much, much better. But anyways, this is a blue-green variant. I think blue-green Reboot is the best build. I thought that for a long time, probably since set 9, where you just have Senzu Bean to be aggressive. You know, Mono Green's good too, but I think when you have Senzu Bean to be aggressive and, you know, untap energy and make more plays, I really think that's what an aggro deck wants to do. So, moving along, we have two different red Gogetas. One was the Prophet of Demise leader, the other was the Fusion Perfected leader from set 6. I think here is another situation sort of similar to like Mono Blue, where you kind of have the freedom to play the leader that fits your playstyle a little bit better. Like Prophet of Demise, for example, you have the ability to play Birth of the Super Warrior, which is basically a hard plus and gets you your fusion pieces automatically. You have Untap 2, you have the automatic double strike on the backside, but Fusion Perfected has the added benefits of, you know, turning off counterattacks, getting that turn 1+1 if you don't see the Birth of the Fusion Warrior. So both have their merits for sure. I personally like the Untap 2 on Prophet of Demise, but I'm actually still going to strongly recommend that you guys try the red Gogeta chain in other leaders, much like the Bulma decks have been doing. I think there's actually potential there with like Red Beerus and maybe even like Red Vegeta Baby, so I would strongly recommend it. And finally, guys, wrapping up the top 16, we have one Majin Vegeta, just a super hyper aggressive build. I do think this deck is also very flexible, even though it does rely on its Boo chain. I think you can kind of sit back, play like a turn 4 game, but also, you know, just play an all-out gas super aggressive strategy, which is the way that the build in this particular tournament decided to play it. So overall, guys, very interesting stuff, still very diverse. We've had diverse top cuts for, I want to say, over a year and a half now. Ever since Super Shenron, we've had very diverse top cuts. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.